Okay, continuing from the first section of the book, now we're moving to the second section of the book titled Teacher Education, which focus more about conceptual papers and case studies of exemplary practices related to the use of digital technology in literacy courses in teacher education. There will be four chapters in this section that will be discussed one by one. The first one is chapter 5 of the book titled Integrating Poetry Focused Digital Technology within a Literacy Teacher Education course. This chapter focuses on how to prepare novice teachers to teach in 21st century learning environments using digital technologies, specifically in the field of poetry practice, which help the student teacher to notice the affordances and challenges that technology gives while they develop their own subject and pedagogic knowledge with critical digital engagement in the class. This chapter was conducted by Sue DeMock, which also involved the student teachers from postgraduate certificate of education or PGCE English program of Leicester University. There were two kind of research that were included in this chapter. The first one was wiki poetry research that was done in the form of poetry workshops involving a wiki space for the student teachers to be able to collaborate in making and sharing their poetries. And the second research was poetry and digital integration within the PGCE English program, which was done in the form of teaching class about websites and application usage for student teachers, not only to learn about poetry, but also to be able to critically read and also judge examples from a range of poetry. Also for them to be able to search for, listen to, and also make and share their poetry. The tools that was used for the first research was, of course, Wikispace, which was a server program that allows the invited users to be able to collaborate in forming the content for a website. While the tools that were used for the second research were Poem Foundation, Poetry Archive, the English and Media Center's Poetry Station, Poetry by Heart, the Westline, and also Shakespeare Sonnets for them to be able to search and listen to some examples of poetry. And also they use YouTube to be able to see the kind of performances of how a poet perform their poetry. And also they use Microsoft Word and Google Docs in order to be able to collaborate and share their own poetry. And Sue DeMock also revealed some challenges that she faced during the researches. For the first research, the challenge were the sometimes limited opportunity to access the ICT equipment and also the potential for cyberbullying between the participants of the research. And also it is also a challenge to build the confidence and independence of the student teachers in sharing their draft work and also to be able to constructively intervene another person's writing draft work. And for the second research, the challenge were specifically specifically focus on the student teachers that needed to experience the challenge of drafting and also shaping a poem in order to be confident about when they need to support the young people or their students in writing their own poetry. And the result of the first research was 63 different poems that were posted in the wiki space, and also the student teachers appear to recognize the pedagogical potential of the wiki space, which they state that it gives them a great model to model classroom discussions and also peer editing online. While for the second research, the results were that the student teachers become increasingly adept at working digitally in their planning, resourcing, teaching, and also tracking individual learners' progress. And also, they were able to use their technological skills to record evidence of their own progress in meeting and surpassing the teacher standards. For the reflection from student teachers in the first research, one of the student teachers reflected that to be able to share on wikis or other kind of blogs removes the element of self-promotion and makes it become more collaborative work for each of the participants. And for the second research, some of the students reflected that it increased the ease in selecting digital resources and integrating technological into their learning. And also it helped them to recognize their professional responsibilities to ensure that students can use technology appropriately and also competently and make progress in their learning. Moving to the chapter 6 of the book, titled Lessons for Teacher Educators about Learning to Teach with Technology. In this chapter, the research was conducted by Firmani and also Williamson, which who emphasized on how student teachers who are going to enter the profession need to learn from the expert practitioners about their approach to technology implementation and integration in order to help them to prepare them to be effectively prepared to teach in 21st century learning environments. And for this chapter, Firmani and also Williamson interviewed two practicing teachers who use innovative approaches to integrate the technology into their classroom. And for the interviews, the teacher were interviewed twice by Firmani and also Williamson using a semi-structured and open-ended interview protocol, which aimed to understand how they approach technology integration and how the digital tools used in their instruction supported and aligned with their learning goals and pedagogy. And there were two teachers that were interviewed. The first one was Ramsey Musalam, who was a high school teacher, a high school chemistry teacher in his 16th year of teaching. He was also a doctorate and master's in education and also a member of multiple education technology organizations such as Google for Education, Certified Innovators, International Society for Technology and Education, and also Computer Using Educators. While the second teacher was Diana Nibe, who was a high school English teacher in her ninth year of teaching. She was also a member of multiple organizations that's similar to Ramsay's organizations. And for the interviews, there were two interviews, and from the first interviews, Firmani and also Williamson highlighted that the two consistent themes that were central to the practice of integrating technologies from both teachers into their instruction and could help inform the preparation of novice teachers. There were, as it was mentioned, there were two kind of themes, which was the first one is the tension between the invincibility of technology in the classroom, and the second one is about how expert the teachers use technology to redefine the role of the teacher with respect to the authority and knowledge in the classroom. About the first theme, which was invincibility of technology, uh, Cremani and also Williamson highlight emphasis on how the three knowledge domain in TPAC, which was technology, pedagogy, and also content, are critical for the teachers to learn how to leverage the power of technology in their teaching. And also as the result of the interview, the expert teachers emphasize the benefits of technology for both students and teachers. However, they stressed about the technology that shouldn't be in that the technology should be invisible in the classroom, where the technology tools should not control the whole instruction in classroom. And in order to have a better understanding on how invincible technology applied into a practice, Freeman and also Williamson highlighted Ramsay's classroom, where where the purpose of the goals of his chemistry class was to help the students to build complete and in-depth knowledge while simultaneously building interest and also motivation of the students to learn chemistry. And in order to achieve these goals, the Ramses used learning models that use three kinds of components, which were explore and also flip, and lastly is apply. In the explore session, usually Ramsey used video to spark the students' curiosity and also ask them to ask a question in the Google form and also submit their response towards each other questions. And after that, Ramsey will display the answer and the questions through Wordle in order to open the discussion of the classroom. And after that, the flip session will start as Ramsey asks the student to learn about the content through video or other kind of material representative outside the class. And lastly, in the apply session, the students will ask to apply their understanding about the content through learning activities such as lab application tasks or group or individual problem solving session. And moving to the themes of the second themes, which was how the teachers redefine technology into the classroom roles and also structure. And it was emphasized that the role of the teacher has begun to shift with advances in technology, where teachers play an essential role in the development of 21st century skills such as critical thinking, creativity, communication, and also collaborations. And to highlight a more better understanding about re- technology redefining classroom role and structure, Firmani and also Williamson used Diana's class, where he often assumes her role as a facilitator. And in the classroom, in Diana's classroom, he usually divided the class with using traditional teaching style and also the technology integrated style. Usually in the class time, Diana will make a consistent effort to put the students into face-to-face conversations and also collaboratively work with each others on project or other kind of activities in order to help them to understand of the subject they learned. And then after the class dismissed, usually she will ask the students to participate in the discussion board and also give them feedbacks to the writing groups through Gdocs and also connect to a wider reading community like Goodreads. So they are so Diana's classroom showed how while she used the integration of technology, she also have still the what is it cont- uh, still use the traditional role of teacher as a guider in learning. And also, as a result and suggestion from the interview, Firmani and also Williamson learned that the expert teachers aimed to make technology invisible to support their pedagogy and help students develop a strong understanding of the content. And also, Firmani and also Williamson suggested that novice teachers should have the knowledge of the various types of tools that teachers use in the field rather than focus only the tool itself. Moving to the chapter 7, which titled Different Approaches to Teacher Education, Maximizing Expertise and Re-examining the Role of Universities and Schools. This chapter was conducted by Sam Twistleton, which was a member part of the Carter Review of ITT or Initial Teacher Training, which focus on the problem of how and where teachers are best prepared for their professions. And it emphasizes on the problem of how the England's administrations presided over unprecedented reforms to teacher education in the form of the drive towards school-led initial teacher education, in which schools have much more control and ownership of how teachers are prepared and where the main context for learning in the school. And then in the background, Twistleton explained of the aim of character review of ITT, which were to define effective ITT practice, to assess the extent to which the system currently delivers effective ITT, and then to recommend where and how improvements could be made, and finally to recommend ways to improve choice in the ITT system by improving the transparency of course content and method, while the scope and constraints of the Carter Review was to identify which type of delivery arrangements and which core elements of high-quality ITT across paces and subject disciplines are key to equipping student teachers with the required skills and knowledge to become outstanding teachers. And come to the methodology, there were some methodology that were done by the of Carter review of ITT. The first one is 11 team roundtable discussion with sector experts, and also 24 meetings and discussion with experts and stakeholders, and then 31 visits to ITT providers and school that involves in ITT, and also a call for evidence that received 148 responses from a range of individuals and institutions, and then a survey of student, teacher, and applicant opinions about ITT course information, and then review of the existing evidence base, including international evidence, and finally a review of course materials from 150 programs. And then there were patterns and themes that become the focus of the review from Carter Review of ITT, which were effective practice, model of teacher development on how teachers learn to teach, and then ongoing development beyond ITT, the communities of practice, innovative use of type, mentoring, tension in goals and outcomes, and also the role of higher education institutions. And the conclusion of the Carter Review of ITT, Twiselton highlighted the best model of ITT that involved very, very deeply formed partnerships with much thought going into the kinds of experiences and also expertise that is needed at every step of the student teacher's journey. And also through the experience of being on the character review of ITT, convinced Twistleton that it would be foolish to deny the enormous potential that exists in the new and emerging models they examine, where students, teachers did need regular and ongoing access to practitioners' expertise in a way that is carefully structured, critically deconstructed, analyzed, and evaluated for the impact on pupil learning and well-being. And then the last chapter of this section, which were the chapter 8 of the book, titled Multimodalities in Literacy, English and Education. Um, this chapter was conducted by Betty Marshall, which conducted 40 days of teaching on PGCE about how to teach English undeterred by the curriculum they use, all the technology available. And in this research, in this research of 40 days teaching, Marshall prepared the printed word, be it a Shakespeare play, a Dickens novel, or poetry by Wordsworth, to be presented to the student teacher of the PGCE program. And in order to defining the multimodalities, Marshall highlighted definition by Jewett, where it defines multimodality as approaches that understand communication and representation to be more than about language, and which attend to the full range of communication, all forms people use, such as image, gesture, gaze, posture, and so on, and also the relationship between them. And then Marshall chose moving image as the example of multimodalities in the session, which he handled two kind of teaching which were PGC and also BFI, which also concentrated on the using short film as a means to literacy, but train and also visual. And in the both session, he used a media approach, analyzing, for example, camera angles, reaction shots, and editing, as well as considering the more literary elements such as setting and also description. And through this session of moving image, the student teacher used films such as Dangle, Father and Daughter, and also The Bread and the LA, and that makes something interesting in the eyes of Marshall, which was how the way student teachers integrated the technical language of media studies with a more English or literacy approach, where they were using a short film for a far more scope to teach narrative skill as well. And after the moving image sessions, the students were asked to write an assignment of an aspect of their practice teaching of English, and typically a third to a half write on teaching Shakespeare. And among all the student teachers, among all of the teachers, Marshall was interesting more about Ibrahim and also Hill assignments, because their assignments appear to be more interesting in a way that they had to read the literature on the subject they were teaching, and then that often means that they did not teach in a way Marshall had recommended before in the moving image session. And then the assignments done by Ibrahim was he used film to teach Much Ado About Nothing, where he only showed the film version once they had read the play, and in order to keep with his personal understanding that this is the right way to teach Shakespeare. And what is good about Mustafa's assignment according Marshall is that he demonstrated his learning about multimodality, where he allowed both readerly and writerly interpretations of Shakespeare's. That was important because it encouraged them to understand the meaning of the text, while the Hale assignments were focused on Romeo and Juliet, and considered the notion of performance in Shakespeare's, and also look less at the pupil's own performance and rather at the play's performance, because the method of exclusively reading the text means pupils do not fully appreciate the works of Shakespeare's. And the fact that the films make understanding the play easier was reinforced by Hale in choosing to make the contemplating adaptation a writerly as well as a readerly task. And as a conclusion from both assignments and also the whole 40 days teaching as a research, that Mustafa Ibrahim and also Donald Hale got a chance to reflect on their own learning by analyzing the learning that has taken place in their lessons. They also able to explore a multimodal way of teaching Shakespeare and discovered that it benefits their students. And then Marshall also added that how teacher education should never teach teacher ah Marshall added that how the student teacher in the teacher education should never teach in a way that refrained the digital, because we live now in the 21st century where the populace where we are going to getting to our students to teach our digital natives. That's all for the second section of the book of Building Bridge. Thank you.